First up, we have with us Bipasha Chakrabarti, who's the Director Corporate Communications for Meta India, which you all know better as Facebook, but I think Meta has also now taken, it's something we've all imbibed very well. Welcome, Bipasha.
Thank you so much. So glad to be here.
I request Shubreet, who is the Creative Director of Hill& Knowlton India, to tell us why are we doing this today. Welcome, Shubreet.
Thanks so much, Parul. Hi, everyone. So, growing up, we have seen movies that showed virtual reality or existing in a space without physically walking into it, and it amazed us all. But now we're at a point of time where technological innovations that seem like fiction or only a figment of our imagination are advancing swiftly and coming to life. With the continuous rise of VR and AR, we can see the metaverse making its way through the internet. And we already know that the new era of the internet, social media, and networking has completely changed the way we live and the way we do things. It has transformed audience behavior, their perception, how they interact with brands, and how they consume information. And now the metaverse, which is a virtual, fast evolving world with your own digital avatars, will probably take it to another level and add a new dimension to how we interact with each other. It's quickly becoming a buzzword and has been explored in sci-fi books as well as Hollywood movies for a very long time. But so far, it was the gaming community that had come closest to the metaverse with digital avatars and virtual headsets. So while the creation of an entire digital landscape is going to take quite some time, but it is expected to be a fully functional universe with a lot of user-generated content as well. Now, coming specifically to communications as a whole, well, this industry has also evolved. An integrated solution has always been our approach, and that includes new age and digital media, social media, influencer outreach, content creation, and even video production. The metaverse will be a further extension of such offerings to our clients wherever it fits into their communication objectives. For example, be it product launches or a virtual press event, the metaverse will be a part of the comms landscape. That in itself has seen such a transformation, and we understand the importance of the current and relevant way of reaching the target audience in an impactful way. And at the end of the day, we have to make sure that we bring our client's message to where the audience wants to hear it, right? So a complete comms proposal today is more experiential and it's immersive, and of course, depending upon brand to brand. And it's not just about awareness and purchase. Key and effective messaging in the metaverse can be used to influence purchase decision or build brand recall and relationships in real life.
Thank you, Shubreet. Yes, the possibilities are literally as big as the universe. And with that, over to Bipasha. Bipasha, my first question to you is a lot of communicators may feel that, in fact, somebody before did say that will PR be done by techies in the future? Having said that, how does the meta fit in with what the communicators' work priorities are?
Thank you so much, Agreed, and thank you so much, Parul, for having me here, and to the audience for joining us on a working day at 4. So thank you so much, and super thrilled to be here. Well, very interesting question, because this is almost like unveiling the different possibilities. I mean, metaverse, of course, like the definition which has been floating around and has become the buzzword of late. Interestingly, like we've started hearing about it in the last couple of months, but actually, if you go back, other than the snow crash when the term was coined, metaverse has been discussed as early as late 90s by the economists, the CNN, where they talked about a different second life, a different avatar. When we talk about metaverse, it's actually, we've seen the transition happening from desktop to mobile to digital, and it is being touted as the successor to the mobile internet. So metaverse, as we know of it, is not a specific game, not an app, not a social platform. It is going to be a shared virtual space, which is going to see the amalgamation of all of the things that's actually happening today. From a communicator's point of view, as an industry, we've geared up right from the offline days of communication, public relations, to leveraging mobile technology, to the internet, and then evolving into the social space, where we learned how to do things differently, adapted to new possibilities, learned different skill set. This time, as we get into the road to metaverse, communicators will, the road is not going to be any different. Communicators will need to think, plan, develop strategies, which is going to address the several characteristics of a metaverse. So if I have to take a step back and look at the three key tenets of the metaverse, of course, there are many versions out there, but the three predominant ones is, of course, metaverse is going to be a continuous experience without any pause or delays. And there's going to be unlimited number of users. So when you're talking to a brand, or when you're talking to a customer, or when a brand's talking to a consumer, there has to be instant gratification. So that's the expectation. So which is agility that's been built in. The second is brands, communities, and individuals would freely engage and generate content. So a lot of content would be generated by users, by brands themselves, blurring the line between the virtual world as well as the physical world. And the third key tenet is going to be that it would encompass both physical as well as the virtual world, with immense amount of interoperability of data, interoperability of assets, interoperability of experiences, and so on and so forth. Now, to come back to the question, right now we are in a phase that there is no playbook that exists. I mean, there are brands, we have seen the brands who are experimenting, there are brands who have gone out, done the basic tenets of the technology that's available today. Businesses are using AR, VR, wearables, remote to kind of work through in how they're gearing up for the metaverse. But as we think through communication, the metaverse environment, when we think from a communicator's point of view, metaverse environment is going to be culturally specific. It's going to be nuanced, it's going to be immersive, and which, of course, will give us an opportunity to think of different varied means of communication. The way we know paid, earned, owned channels today, the approaches will need to be different. The approaches will need to be more immersive, which will need to be more nuanced. Even the engagement model, it could range from gamified rewards instantly to a longer, more experiential long tail of a campaign. So the spectrum is quite varied. The other key things that communicators need to keep in mind as they think about the metaverse is, like with every new technology, that the metaverse is going to bring new risks. So crisis management, issue management is going to become front and center, far more critical as we think about communication in the metaverse. So
thank you, Bipasha. I think you've raised an issue which we'll come back to later, that how crisis management is going to get and has already got greatly challenging. You mentioned that literally the sky is the limit, but do you think that there are any sectors there are particular sectors which would be more akin to taking up positions on Meta for their storytelling? We've already seen examples of Victoria's Secret and McDonald's internationally, where they've actually taken positions in the Meta and blocked space there, so to speak. So what is your opinion on what sectors are likely to uptake it first?
If you ask me, like during the digital, this was a question that often used to come during the digital times, which sector is going to be, digitized? I would say all sectors, because all brands, all sectors need to provide a connected experience to the consumer, irrespective of whichever industry you're looking at. A consumer needs to understand, consumer needs to feel, the consumer needs to feel connected to the brand. And this would cut across all sectors. Of course, like in any other technology trend or any other new phase, when new technologies get implemented, there are some industries which are laggards, there's some industries which are first movers, right? We are already seeing a huge amount of disruption in commerce, conversational commerce. Today, one can get into discoverability has become such a great and such a game changer in conversational commerce. I could be sweeping right and left and up and down in a social media, platform, and my eyes can get stuck to a new cosmetic range, and I can actually use the AR filter to try it out. So obviously this is not a phenomena that's happening. This has been happening for the last few years, and we have only seen it accelerated, especially also thanks to COVID, where people have been spending more time online. Conversational commerce, entertainment, immersive education, even tourism has been some of the industries which has absolutely seen a huge uptake in this whole experiential thing. Of course, there are other industries, be it manufacturing, be it in terms of other traditional industries. There is a huge opportunity even then. If I talk about an energy, and I met just a gentleman right at the beginning of the session, whether it's an energy organization or even a hard manufacturing organization, the immersive experience of actually going through the factory floor or going through the process, the assembly process of actually watching. You don't need to be in the factory floor to see how the manufacturing happens. So there is a huge opportunity for every industry to get disrupted by this immersive experience, and we've just barely scratched the surface of that.
I think that's very interesting. In fact, there used to be a show called Great Factories of the World at one point on, I think, the Discovery on Nat Geo. And I think what it does for transparency of how your product is being manufactured is pretty amazing. And as someone who's shot in auto factories and the most beautiful glass manufacturing factory, it's a very, very intriguing and exciting experience. Flowing from what you just said, Bipasha, at what point should a communicator start thinking of meta? There is sort of like a influencer one-on-one. People do say that don't introduce a product or a service with an influencer. Get your earned media in place, get your marketing in place before you use this kind of push. So what is your opinion on when should meta enter into the story building mix?
I would actually, Parul, flip that question. I would say when comms move from an offline to an online, subsequently mobile and digital, uh, today businesses are already using a lot of these technologies as they do the brand building through different technologies, of course, with the contribution of influencer marketing as well as creator economy as we know it, which often comes across, makes another dimension to the influencer marketing ecosystem. The question is, how do you integrate comms right into the metaverse space as you're building for it? That's probably the lens I would look at. And today, if you see what's happening, today you have businesses where, if you're going furniture shopping, there are businesses who are actually giving you a AR filter to see whether the furniture fit into your house. Or if I'm going to go and buy a pair of glasses, I can actually get into a virtual reality kind of setup where I can actually try out the glasses. So that's happening. So as brands start firming up and as brands starts getting in mainstream and this becomes far more prolific, I think communication needs to get into that opportunity right away. Otherwise, it's going to be a lost, it's going to be a lost opportunity. So if you look at it, and I think it was talked about earlier, even from a tactical standpoint, if I really have to translate it, if brands are using technology, nothing stops us from actually even executing on some of the comms engagement virtually. We don't need to we and all of us from the comms industry know that a new launch happening at the headquarters, a new junket. Of course, the world looks different now over the last 2 years, but as in the world opens up, you don't really need to take a bunch of journalists to your headquarters to really go and see and experience some of the product launches or some of the things that you're doing. That can actually happen right now as you plan. It's also a matter of a mindset shift as well as the technology, building on the capability of the technology. So I would say it should happen as and when brands are looking at building for the metaverse.
Oh, that's interesting. Maybe the dreaded field visit by journalists can be a thing of the past. I think there's not a single PR person in this podcast today who's not suffered through that. So that would be really fabulous to do that. One final question before we open it up for the audience, Bipasha. Could you share some of the experiences of brands? I'm not asking you for brand names per se, but can you share some of the experiences of the brands? How have they responded to this whole meta opportunity?
Actually, there's been such a great uptake of things that's happening, and brands. I mean, in fact, earlier today when I was reading through, if you look at the list of brands, and the obvious ones we know about it, whether it's Gucci Garden, whether it's Valencia, whether it's some of the other things, Sephora, Wendy's, NFL. You talk about brands. I mean, these are brands which are already there in the public domain, who've already done it, like Nike. I think more and more brands are getting onto the brand wagon because it's, one of the things that I do want to leave the audience with and this group with is it's not a pause and a shift that's happening. One needs to understand that brands are invariably using technology today, which is part and parcel of their brand building, which is going to set the foundation for metaverse. It is not a new thing that the brands are using a VR filter or an AR filter to try and say, if there is a foods brand which is launching a new food product line, and they had a hologram of a chef coming in to talk about the nutrition value and talk about the product line. It's not something that is there was a pause and then these things need to be set in stone. These are things which has been happening, and there are tons of brand. I mean, increasingly, when you look at the list, I was quite surprised by the list when I saw it, and it's a huge list. It's a lot of homegrown brands as well, and now it's not just the brands. You've also seen marriages happening in metaverse, so it's an absolute exciting possibility.
Yes, so to recap what you're saying, it's not a pause and a shift. It's not like a pause. You take a drink of water, think a bit, sweep the floor, and then think what to do ahead. It's happening in real time. So I think the advice from you is that jump on as soon as you can. Otherwise, it may be too late already. And that logic of you cannot really introduce a product is gone, because your first interaction with the product and service could be via an immersive situation. So that could very well be the very first interaction you have. Thank you so much, Bipasha. Now I'm going to throw it open for questions. If there are any questions from the audience, you can raise your hand or just text it or just unmute yourself and ask. Any questions? Yes, Fatima, go ahead. And Rajan, after that, you can go ahead.
Hi. So I actually had a twofold question.
Fatima, would you like to just introduce yourself briefly? Just one line about you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. So I'm Fatima Khokar. I am a senior partner associate at Whitemark Solutions. It's a boutique PR agency based in Mumbai. So what I wanted to understand that, in fact, I was very interested in this event because I have been trying to toy with the idea of how we can have brands to understand, the importance of metaverse and how we can do something for them using this technology. So one apprehension that brands have had is the cost factor of, doing something. So, of course, with time, things do as they get more and more democratized and, they're likely that the cost is likely to drop. But I do feel that there is a lot of lack of awareness even now, even for people like us who want to do something. I think there is still more to know. So I want to understand if is it true that it has to be like, crores of budget to be able to do something in the metaverse, or, are there possibilities to explore within the realm of the current kind of marketing budgets that, say, even a big brand would have for that matter for marketing? So if you could give me some understanding over here, some range there. And then the second part of it is that can it truly give the kind of ROI to the brand?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Fatima. Good to connect with you. And then, so let me jump onto your first question, budgets. Okay. If you remember, during the time when digital was taking shape and form and everybody said, hey, how expensive is it going to be, a digital budget? How can we run it? If you ask me, it completely depends on the scale and the scope of what you're trying to do. Yes, bringing on an immersive experience requires certain technology investment, certain skill sets. So if you are thinking of a campaign where you really need to focus on spatial audio, haptic gloves, 3D avatar, yes, is something that is worth investing in, and it will probably be not of, it could it would require some amount of substantial investment. But that said, when you're talking about, when you're starting off the journey and when businesses are looking at different technology, whether it's AR and VR, and I keep coming back to it, or wearables, because it's far more pervasive today than you're talking about some of the other things like spatial audio and haptic gloves and all of that. That's kind of the phase two. But when you kickstart the kind, I wouldn't say, I would say it's about deciding on the scope and the scale at which you want to do the campaign. And like any other, trend that you dip into, yes, there is some kind of an investment that's required. And in fact, more than investment, I would also say the skill set of the team and the ecosystem that you're going to work with, which is going to contribute and which is going to determine how expensive and what should be the budget like. I'm sorry, what was your second question?
No, I was just asking about the ROI bit of it. Like, how we do have celebrity endorsements, which some brands have started to kind of feel that, at times, I mean, in today's time, it is not driving the kind of ROI that it used to before, because, people are not just celebrity crazy now, especially the urban audiences. I mean, it's still not something that has changed completely, but when it comes to a new concept, that's usually the first question that, are we going to truly get an ROI if we invest such a substantial amount?
So think of it this way. I mean, this is still evolving, and once it evolves and when it reaches a stage where it becomes mainstream, maybe the way to measure it would be far more different than that. I mean, if you honestly ask me, when we do a campaign today, I mean, that's one of the struggles of the comms industries anyways. They're an absolute, framework or matrix that we have. It says, hey, listen, PR alone has driven X amount or ROI. That's more notional, right? Because, whether you talk about reputation building, whether you're talking about brand building, yes, you do have certain indexes, you do have certain matrix and framework, but doing a complete comparison, like a direct proportional comparison, is something that probably as an industry we haven't figured out yet. To know that, hey, listen, Metaverse, my campaign is supposed to give me X amount of ROI. And ideally we should reach there, but I would say it's still early days. Let it become mainstream, let more brands jump into the bandwagon, let more brands create campaigns, comms campaigns to run on Metaverse. And I think that answer will keep evolving and will probably be in a better space, say, a few years out.
Right.
Thank you for your question, Fatima.
In the long run, when it comes to Metaverse, how do you think it'll play for FMCG brands, food product brands, when it comes to launching any kind of product or any kind of experience? Because that will be one thing that would be a miss, right, when it comes to Metaverse, like giving a product experience of sorts in the virtual world. The entire play of taste and the sensory play basically for products. So how do you think that it'll play in the future, and probably are we going to see something better in terms of how we keep talking about 4D 5D experiences? So what do you think the future is going to be like for FMCG brands and the Metaverse?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. The Metaverse is not a replacement of physical experiences. It is to enable a hybrid of physical and virtual experiences. There is the idea is not to actually replace what you can feel and see and especially taste. Idea is to create the asset, create an experience, whereas some experiences, whether it's taste, whether it's any other things, it's not to replace the physical world.